Why don't we start off with a big bounty for our first topic of
Mm-hmm.
review for 2022, which is the thing that kicked off the year, right? The Book of Boba Fett.
Sure. Book of Boba Fett. Yeah. Not one of my favorite Star Wars things overall. I'd say like the things I liked about it is a really strong second episode that I think stands tall on its own. With like the you know Boba Fett being like integrated into like the Tuscan society. I thought all that episode was really really strong. And then I think from there it was pretty hit or miss for the show. I think I enjoyed seeing Black Chrysanthemum in live action. That was cool. Um, the Mandalorian episode was good, but it was just an episode of The Mandalorian. Um, and I didn't care for the still not a fan of deep fake Luke. And that whole part like just didn't, if they were going to tell that story, it just like didn't end up having the impact you would think that story would have in this context. um like the the mods and the mopeds and everything and that chase, they are what they are. And I think the like finale episode wasn't super strong, so it didn't leave like a super great impression. But there were some good things about it. I think Fennec Shand was great. I think um uh Boba Fett's like performance was great. Tamora was awesome throughout. But there's so many things that just make me like think I'll probably won't rewatch that at least anytime soon. Because like overall it's just such a rocky show. What are your thoughts now in hindsight?
Yeah, they're pretty similar. I mean, it's they're pretty similar. I think it has some pretty high highs for sure. Also some fairly significant lows, Um, and to me, it's definitely like it's a little bit of a step down from The Mandalorian as a show. So, but it's not something I was really um, fiending for. You know what I mean? Or really,
Mm-hmm.
really looking for. Like I wasn't really looking for a Boba Fett show, and yeah, I think there's more to it, I guess, than I might have expected in some ways. I think like the emphasis on these older characters, Boba Fett and Fennec Shand, both older characters. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I think the stuff with the Tuscans is incredible. For the most
Mm-hmm.
part, like really really strong, and not
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect that.
Yep.
And as much as like the show can be pretty clunky at times, it's also there's stuff in there that like is much better than I expected, or they really didn't have to go that hard with Boba Fett's backstory, right? Like it
Yeah.
could have been the first 10 minutes like him clawing his way out of the Sarlacc pit, and then it could have been badass Boba Fett for however many 6 episodes or whatever it was. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot more depth there, and there are some interesting ideas there, some really good stuff. But there's a fair amount of it where I just it was not on that next kind of level for me, or just not
Mm-hmm.
as strong as some of the other stuff, I guess. So um it's probably the last one I would go back to. But I overall I enjoyed it. There was a while there where it was like, okay, are they going to announce a second season of the Book of Boba Fett? And that hasn't happened so far.
Mm-hmm.
If they did, I would be, I don't know if excited is the right word, but I'd be like, okay, like, yeah, let's do this, let's see
Yeah.
what happens and what they do. Um, but it's not, definitely not my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
So I did enjoy the Mandalorian stuff. I think really you said one episode. I feel like there was actually like, weren't there two episodes that were really Mando focused?
Like one and a half,
One
kind
and a
of.
half.
Yeah.
I think there were two where we did not see Boba Fett even once, if I'm remembering correctly. Because there's the episode where the Mandalorian is on that space station, which was an awesome episode, right? He like opens up
Hmm.
with that really cool space station, and he has the whole interaction with the armor and all that stuff. And then
Hmm.
I think there's a second episode after that, which is like almost it's mostly Luke and Grogu, and I don't think those are the same episode unless
Oh
I'm
yeah, that's true.
misremembering.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there were 2 weeks in a row where Boba Fett was not present at all in the Book of Boba Fett, which
Yeah.
that rubs some people the wrong way. And I think there's a debate there. Is like, okay, well, is it should does it come down to the title of the show ultimately? Like, is the problem that it's the Book of Boba Fett, or
Hmm.
is the problem that the way the story was structured or whatever? Uh, and I don't have a concrete opinion on that myself,
Yeah.
but it's just an interesting kind of situation. Um,
Hmm.
I also think that the Luke Grogu thing, um, setting aside deep fake Luke, who I have more affection for than you do,
Hmm.
but setting that part of it aside, I'm not. I don't. I still. I guess the jury is out for me in terms of how I feel about that all being resolved so quickly and
Hmm.
not even in the Mandalorian. You know,
Yep.
um, I don't want to bring it back to wrestling, Ryan. We talked about
Hmm.
wrestling a lot when you were hanging out in Dan's
Hmm.
basement,
Hmm.
but I like to see a storyline drawn out. I like to see
Yeah.
let's dig in and let's kind of pull out the drama and let's let it simmer for a little bit. And sometimes in wrestling that happens, and sometimes in wrestling, like something like a tag team will turn on each other, or what one friend will
Hmm.
stand stab the other in the back like right away too quickly,
Yep.
for my taste. And I feel like, God, there's so
Hmm.
much that we could have done with that before coming to this conclusion. And,
Hmm.
you know, I feel that way a little bit, I think, with Mando and Grogu there, don't you?
Yeah, and I think like that felt like something that should have felt like a really big moment because it was, again, like technology stuff aside, like storytelling wise, that was a huge moment in Mandalorian season 2. It's the biggest moment in like that universe like so
Hmm.
far. And then for it to just kind of be like this really really quick thing, like what it reminded me of is um the oh geez, I'm blanking on the name. Poochie. Poochie from The Simpsons, where it's like whenever Poochie's not on the screen, the audience should be asking, "Where's Poochie?" Like I think
Hmm.
that was like the approach that they ended up taking towards Grogu, where it's like we just gotta. It doesn't even matter. We just gotta get this like money machine back on the screen. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, probably. Although, we talked about it at the time too. It's like, I think they would have known he was a money machine by the time they wrote him out at the end of season 2, wouldn't they? It's like, why
mhm.
do that? If that's how you feel, just like don't even separate them.
Yeah, but
I
I
don't know.
think it almost feels like you just get that cheap pop. It feels like a cheap pop now at the end of season 2 where you have like this big moment, and then like you were saying with wrestling stuff, like you have this big moment and it's like huge like at like WrestleMania or something, and then like the next week's Raw it like completely just resolves and or like
Sure.
reverses, like
Sure.
cuz yeah, so it was just it's awkward, like
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
Well, to wrap up Book of Boba Fett talk,
Hmm.
since that's not even, among our favorite things we're going to discuss here in review,
Hmm.
I will just say too, the finale left me feeling a little. I didn't think the finale was incredibly well executed, I guess, to my
Hmm.
taste. So that was a little bit of a disappointment for me too. Um, I think in retrospect, kind of like the Ray Harryhausen, Godzilla, King Kong monster
Hmm.
movie stuff they were going for in the end. Maybe I need to rewatch it and kind of just try to appreciate it on that level, and understand maybe that's
Hmm.
ultimately what kind of a large chunk of that finale was all about. But
Hmm.
there again, like Grogu just showing up in the X-wing taxi like right away. It was just so fast, you know what I mean? Where yeah, I don't know. And even the resolution of Boba Fett's story there, to me was a little. I don't want to say I want more Book of Boba Fett, but I almost feel like that conclusion, didn't matter all that much to me in terms of the way his story wrapped up at the end of the show. So, yeah, I like the show, okay, but it was not the highlight of 2022 for me. It is not the highlight of the Disney Plus Star Wars programming, but there were like we said, before, there were some major highlights and some really great stuff in there. So, yeah.